Time for some review. So let's go ahead and look at our first rhythm here. For our purposes, all of these are going to be 6-second strips. So go ahead, pause the video, and walk your way through this, and then I'll analyze it with you step by step. Alright, if you look, the QRSs here are narrow. I have P waves. They're upright, round, and symmetric. PR ratio, is it 1 to 1? Well, I'm missing a P wave here, so I got more QRSs than P waves, but it's clipped off at the beginning. This is a great example of what I was discussing before. You don't know if there's actually a P wave before that, so all the way through here, everything else here matches out. So this is a 1 to 1 PR ratio on this, so that's the way to answer that question. How about PR interval? PR interval here, it looks consistent every single time. It's exactly the same distance. Now, more importantly, if it's consistent, we have to figure out how many blocks it is, and since this one is on graph paper, we can do that. I have basically here to here would be 5 blocks, 6. This is a 7-block PR interval. Let's check another one over here. That's starting a little bit off of there, a little before there. It's 7 blocks. And if you look, it looks consistent each time. They're all the same distance apart. So I have PR interval is 7 blocks. It's consistent, but it's 7 blocks. How about the R to R? R to R is nice and regular. If you counted it out, we've got basically 1, 2, 3, just short of 4 blocks between each. Just spot check another one. 1, 2, 3, a little short of 4 blocks again. So it's consistent R to R. It's regular R to R. And my rate on here, this being a 6-second strip, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 beats. That's a rate of roughly 80 beats per minute. So everything here fits sinus rhythm except for the PR interval being too long. This would then be a first degree AV block. Since the rate's 70, the answer that we're going to come up with for this is going to be sinus rhythm with a first degree AV block. Alright, here's our second example. Go ahead, pause the video and walk your way through the steps and come back when you're ready. So if you look at this one, QRSs are narrow, and this is unrealistically narrow. I apologize, that's my computer program, but nonetheless, they would not be like a half block wide. But either way, you have narrow QRSs, certainly not wide. P waves. Yep, we've got upright, round, symmetric P waves. PR ratio, is it 1 to 1? Not so much. I've got more P waves than I have QRSs in here. How about PR interval? Is it consistent or inconsistent? Well, take a look at that PR interval there and that PR interval there. It's not even close. So PR interval is inconsistent on here. And this is our happy dance time once again, because remember, for the core rhythms, there's really only 2 possibilities. We look at the R to R. Is it regular? Well, 1, 2.5 blocks, 1, 2.5 blocks. Oh, yeah, it is. 1, 2.5 blocks. Yeah, it's regular. Keep going. 1, 2, 3, almost 4. Ooh, no. Guess what? It's not regular. I have an irregular R to R. So inconsistent PR interval with an irregular R to R. What was that? Think back to the chart. That's second degree type 1 Wenckebach. So I've got that figured out. Now the last thing I need to do just to answer the last question is what's my rate? I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Heart rate's 100. So borderline, you could call this sinus rhythm with Wenckebach, or you could call it sinus tach with Wenckebach. If it's actually a rate of 100, I don't care. If you get real picky and you go in deeper than that and you determine the heart rate's 101, it's sinus tach, and if it's 99, then it's sinus rhythm. But if you get 10 beats on here, I give you the opportunity to flip a coin. You can call it either sinus rhythm or sinus tachycardia. If it's me, I would rather try and keep the name as normal as possible, so I just call this a sinus rhythm with Wenckebach, or sinus rhythm with second degree type 1 AV block. Here's rhythm number 3. Go ahead and walk through the rules and pause the video until you get there, and then we'll analyze it together. Okay, so this one I've got QRS is narrow. I have P waves here. They're round, upright, symmetric. PR ratio, it's not 1-to-1. I've got more P waves than I have QRSs. How about the PR interval? Now, this is one, again, be careful. PR interval, I'm not measuring this P wave to that QRS. This P wave here has nothing to do with that QRS. This P wave is all by its little lonesome. There's no QRS that's associated. This P wave is what resulted in that QRS. So if I look, same, 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 same. So the PR interval is consistent. If you remember, I gave you this pair of rules. If I've got more P waves than QRSs and consistent PR intervals, that combination there tells us we've got second degree type 2. I'm adding in here an extra thing, so let me go ahead and we'll do this on here. I got to switch over to the tablet, and this is second degree type 2. The name for that, nickname for that, is called Classic Heart Block. It's a really bad looking C. That's not great, but it's better. So second degree type 2, second degree Mobitz 2. The nickname for that is called Classic. It's not named after a person, it's just called Classic. Why is it Classic? I have no earthly clue. I wasn't around and they didn't ask me. But second degree type 2 is the Classic heart block. So I've got more P waves than I have QRSs, and I have a consistent PR interval. I know it's not second degree type 1, I know it's not third degree because it has a consistent PR interval. And second degree type 1 and third degree both have inconsistent PR intervals. So this is second degree type 2. Then I count out my rate, or I'm sorry, R to R, check to see is R to R regular. Well, of course it's not. You got these gaps in between here, so the R to R is irregular. And my rate here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You only count QRSs, you don't count P waves. So the rate's 90. So this would be sinus rhythm with a second degree type 2 or classic heart block. All right, I'm going to have you go ahead and walk through this rhythm and pause the video, and then we'll go ahead and analyze it together. So if you look at this one, QRSs are narrow again. P waves, round, upright, symmetric. PR ratio, if you look at this, this is actually a 2-to-1. I've got more P waves than QRSs, though. That's the most important piece. How about PR interval? Is it consistent? Yep, every time I have a PR interval here, it's the same. So I have a consistent PR interval with more P waves than QRSs. We've already got the makings here of a classic heart block, second degree type 2. But we finish out the rhythm here. R to R, is it regular? Yes, R to R is regular. They're evenly spaced on throughout this rhythm here. Each one of them is what here? 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks wide. 4 blocks between, 4 large blocks. So what's my heart rate on here? 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got a heart rate of 70. So this is sinus rhythm with a second degree type 1, second degree type 2 or classic heart block. All right, last but not least, go ahead and analyze through this using our steps and pause the video, and then we'll work it together. So if you look at this again is the computer program working on this, but it would not be these triangular points like this. It would be more of a sine wave, but nonetheless, the QRSs here are not narrow. These are wide QRSs. They're basically 5 blocks wide. So, I mean, if you look at this one, this is pretty clean. This starts before the line and ends pretty much right on the line. So it's like 5.5 block wide QRSs. That's a wide QRS. So we start thinking ventricular right away. But if you look, are there P waves? Yep, there sure are. So there's P waves. So we probably got something else going on other than just simply a ventricular rhythm. Are the P waves round, upright, symmetric? Yep. Are the so PR ratio, is it 1 to 1? Well, of course not. I mean, there's 1, but there's 2, there's 2. So yeah, it's not 1 to 1. I have more P waves than I have QRSs on this strip. How about PR interval? Is it consistent? Well, it doesn't take very long. I look at this one, I look at the first one, that's like, what, 13 blocks long? That's ridiculous. And then this one's like 2.5, and this one, oh, that's almost kind of normal. But so it's an inconsistent PR interval. Well, yay, that's our 50-50 shot here for the most part. Inconsistent PR interval, we look at the R to R, see if it's regular or irregular to determine, do I have Wenckebach or third degree? So R to R, if I count this out, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just short of 7 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just short of 7 blocks again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just a little short of 7 blocks. So consistent regular R to R. Regular R to R is a third degree block. What it means is the atria is doing one thing, the ventricle is doing something else. They're not really communicating with one another well. It's disjunction on there. On this beat, it looks like it's almost normal. You might actually get a little better push on there because you get some atrial kick, but it's purely coincidence that the atria fired just before the ventricles did. On these other ones, you've got, ridiculous 12, 13 block PR intervals. That is not any connection between the atria and the ventricles. But it's not Wenckebach here because we don't see that gradual. You got long, then you got a drop beat, then you got a really short, then a drop beat, then a medium, then a really long. And honestly, if you map this out, this is another kind of cool thing that I'll show you here real quick. 1, 2, it's about 3 blocks between the P waves. So if I come over here, 1, 2, 3 blocks, look at this T wave. It's taller. See, that one's 2 blocks below the line up here, and this one goes almost to the line. That's another P wave that's hidden right at the top of that T wave. You wouldn't have found that unless you knew to look there, but what's neat about this is you don't need to find it in order to determine what the rhythm is. It's an inconsistent PR interval and a regular R to R. Regular R to R. The R to R is the same distance each time. So that is the hallmark of a third degree complete heart block. These are some of the most complicated rhythms that we deal with in this class. You do have a heavy number of this to deal with on test 3. However, you're going to find with this that you can probably answer the 6 questions even if you bobble the name and you're not really sure. And honestly, I don't mind that in this class because if you go out there as an EKG tech, they're asking you to acquire the EKGs. Your job as an EKG tech is not to interpret the EKGs. Obviously, you're a healthcare provider. You walk in the room, and if somebody's dead, if they're not breathing and there's no pulse, they want you to hit the button and start CPR. But they don't expect you to try and diagnose and prescribe a course of treatment for these different rhythms. So if you go in and tell somebody, yeah, they've got an inconsistent PR interval with a regular R to R and with regular R to R, it sounds weird when I say that. So with regular R to R, that's third degree block. There's just a disconnect between the atria and the ventricles. Complete heart block on there. Somebody that has a heart rate like this of 40, I'm a little bit concerned. They're not getting the extra boost from the atria, so they would end up most likely on a list trying to get a pacemaker in, and we're going to be talking about that in a week or two. But the key here is you just being able to determine QRSs are wide here, P waves are upright, PR ratio is more P wave than QRS, PR interval is inconsistent, R to R is regular, and the rate is 40. So you can get 6 points on there even if you don't remember for sure which was which. Obviously, I'd like for you to do that. That's how you're going to get the extra points on there, but you can get 6 out of 7 points even without having the names down perfectly for these. So don't overly stress on them. Just get in there and do some practice on these rhythms. Take a look at the chapter that's covering your AV blocks and look at the practice rhythms that are there. What's nice about this is you should be able to analyze most any rhythm in there, and you might find some things that I'm not really sure what that's supposed to mean, because I see some wide and some narrow QRSs on here. We haven't discussed it, but answer as many questions as you can. Just look for patterns, look for consistencies, and you'll find you can answer more questions about this than you can't. So if you have questions, email me or feel free to ask in lecture. And good luck with your practice on this, and that's going to conclude the material for this week.